Hello, welcome to the TU Sports Extra Podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by our TU beat writer, John Tranchina. And John, it's been a couple of weeks since you and I have talked. You've had a couple of really good player guests on the podcast. You had Bryson Powers 2 weeks ago, Owen Ostrowski last week. Both really good listens. If you missed it, it's in our podcast. Go check it out. Getting a college football player one-on-one is not easy these days, so we certainly appreciate TU's assistance, and we appreciate Bryson and Owen for taking some time to talk with you. Little promo there, but also that leaves you and I, John, with a good bit to talk about. John, give me a sense of the general vibe around the program now. They're coming off the off week, winnable game tomorrow night. They've lost 3 straight. Just kind of tell us what's going on with TU.
I think the biggest thing is that there's a lot of more optimism than maybe some of the fan base would expect or has themselves. But okay. I think the bye week really helped a lot. Like probably more mentally than physically, but they seem like they're more refreshed and like raring to go than maybe they were 2 weeks ago. I guess you really can't underestimate the benefit of getting a little extra rest, not having the body beaten up last weekend during the game, and just kind of having that negative taste in your mouth from that Navy game kind of recede into the background a little bit further. So it looks like they're all raring to go, and this is a team that's a little re-energized and refreshed, which frankly is a good thing because they're gonna need to use that.
Well, and that kind of leads me to my next question, although you partially answered it there. What type of team do you expect to see tomorrow night? And to be clear, we're taping this on a Thursday. It is tomorrow night. They play Friday night, 6:30. What type of team do you expect to see?
Yeah, I expect to see a team that's energized and ready to go and a little healthier. I mean, there were a number of guys beaten up that were playing, and a number of guys maybe who I have no confirmation on this, but maybe we'll get this a player or two back who was injured. But at the very least, and maybe I'm already leading into your next question, but I feel like Davis Brin is going to be able to play and to be a little more mobile because he's had a little extra time. But overall, mentally, I think it was probably even more mentally than anything else that the team really needed this kind of break. And sometimes I know people say they don't want to go into a break on a down note because then it sits with you all this time. But on the other hand, I feel like, it was good to just let it recede into the background, and kind of none of the players really even when, we had the press conference on Tuesday, the players were like, that Navy game is long in the rearview mirror. They're way past it now.
Is part of the optimism you referenced, John, maybe due to the fact that TU is no stranger to rallying in the second half of the season? They Garrett and our colleague Garrett kind of alluded to that in a column earlier this week. They're no stranger to this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and players even noted it. Like they last year they were kind of in a similar situation. Kind of down. They were at, what was it? They were 3-6 actually at, a little later, a couple of weeks later than this last year. And they rallied to win their last 4 games. So interestingly, before that, they were 3-5 and they played that big game against Cincinnati, who was ranked number 2 in the nation at the time. And they nearly beat them. And perhaps that just kind of spurred them on again for the following games, and they went on and won the last 4 after that. So yeah, I mean, I think, and knowing that they were able to do that last year and kind of rebound and do that, even without some of their key players, because there were guys like John Michael Terry, Kendaren Ray, Keelan Stokes, they were all out for that stretch. So they didn't even have 3 of their best players. So I think that knowing that they can do that is going to go, goes a long way mentally and, in the confidence that they have.
So back to Davis Brin for a second. Is he 100%, John?
He's not 100%. He wouldn't say he was. He wouldn't say what percentage he was, but he said, the consensus is he's significantly better than he was. He's not 100%, but he's a lot better. So to me, that at least means that you're going to get a guy who won't just be standing immobile in the pocket. He'll have at least an opportunity to move around a little bit, and that will go a long way to maybe reducing a couple of those sacks he took or some of the hits as he's throwing the ball. Because those last two games where he was kind of hobbled, and a lot of sacks were given up. Now, you could say that's on the offensive line, but you could also maybe attribute a couple of those to him just not being able to move around quick enough. And then in addition to all those sacks, he got hit a lot when he was throwing the ball. A couple interceptions came off of throws that got altered as he was hit. There was even, I think, a lost fumble in a situation like that, and a few other incompletions that got altered as he was hit. So hopefully with a little bit better protection, offensive line guys who are maybe a little healthier, and him being able to move around a little bit, that can at least mitigate those issues in this game.
If you were going to project a score for Friday night, what kind of game are you seeing?
Well, let's see. I think we're gonna see a TU team that is gonna be close to the offensive team that we've seen. I feel like some of those scenarios I just laid out with Bryn being a little more mobile, the offensive line being a little healthier, that's going to help that aspect of it. I think we're going to see, and truthfully, Temple isn't really that good. They haven't been that good. They're 2-4, just like TU is, but their last game was a 70-13 loss to UCF, which UCF is pretty good, but they're not that good. So, yes, but perhaps their fans could be looking like, well, TU just lost 53-21 to Navy, so who knows? But I feel like overall, that's what we're getting. This is going to be a team, and the fact that this is the first game after a break where they're refreshed and they're coming off a tough loss, I feel like TU is going to be ready to go. So if you're looking for a score, I'm going to go with like a 38-21 win for Tulsa.
Okay. So Philip Montgomery has the weekly press conference with the media, obviously. Any nuggets come out of this week that you want to share?
Yeah, there's a couple. The first biggest thing is actually, which is going to be a key undercurrent to this game this week, and is a main topic of my game preview story that will be in tomorrow's paper, is Keelan Stokes is basically on the verge of breaking the all-time Tulsa record for receiving yards. So that was a big topic of discussion at the press conference. It's a pretty amazing accomplishment, a record that has stood since 1965. Howard Twilley, the big receiver in the Jerry Rome era. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty big deal, and there was a lot of nice things said about Keelan and his abilities to be at this point to be able to break this record. It's 28 yards away. It's pretty much guaranteed that he's going to break it on Friday night. So that was one big thing. Interestingly, the biggest note, perhaps slightly aside of football, that came up in the press conference was, as Coach Montgomery was going through some of the types of treatment that Davis Brin has been undergoing for his ankle injury, he was rattling off different things he would be doing, and in the process said something about a laser machine. And a couple of us are like, he's undergoing treatment on a laser machine? What in the world is that? So after several other questions went by, I finally spoke up, and I'm like, all right, what is a laser machine?
Back to this laser.
Hold on a minute. Yeah. Like, how could you guys go on and ask questions about the running game or the defense when he said something about a laser machine? So anyway, yeah, apparently it's some fancy new medical thing that, adds heat to the affected body part and helps facilitate healing and all kinds of things. And I was just like, man, I need to upgrade my healthcare. I could use a laser machine. So yeah, that was probably the biggest takeaway for me.
Did he say which player was utilizing this treatment?
He threw it out there as a general thing without necessarily specifically saying it was Davis Brin. It was in the context of what Brin is going through, but he wasn't specifically saying Brin did that. And when Davis got up there, he didn't confirm or deny the laser machine theory. But yeah, it was that was interesting.
Well, so Gary Neiman wrote this earlier this week in the same column I referenced earlier, kind of talking about the bowl outlook for TU. Again, like you mentioned earlier, they rallied last year. They got into a bowl. They won a bowl. Ended on a good note. Does this team make a bowl game? Yes or no? Yes or no? Then explain.
Yeah, I'm going to be optimistic and say they do, but it's going to be tough. The only way to do that is to end up. Obviously, you got to hit 6 wins. That means 4 more, and they have 6 games. That's going to be a tough task. But I feel like right now the Navy game is the outlier. They had 2 games before that, so they've lost 3 in a row. But the 2 games before that were really close battles with really good teams. So I feel, that Navy game to me was just, they just couldn't handle the run option offense that Navy had, and that kind of threw everything else out the window. So I feel like if they get back to playing a team that has a normal offense or somewhat conventional offense, they're going to be able to stop it pretty decently, at least to the point where our offense, the Tulsa offense, can overcome the points that it puts up. So yeah, I feel like they can do it. I mean, some of the games left on the schedule, they have teams that are, there's Tulane, which you never necessarily thought was going to be that good, but is now ranked and is having a good season. So they're on the horizon. You have SMU and Memphis that are games that are teams that have been sort of up and down over the year, and you don't know which one you're going to get each game. So those are also winnable games depending on how things fall. They end the season with a game against South Florida, who has historically been not very good. So that's certainly a winnable game. And then the last game of the season is Houston, which people thought were going to be a lot better than they were. And now they're sort of up and down as well. So there's a lot of possible areas for victories. There's also obviously, some of those games, teams that have been inconsistent that could go the other way too. But I feel like I'm going to be optimistic and feel like that this team, that Navy game was the outlier, and they're going to play. If they play as well as they did against Mississippi and Cincinnati, there's 4 wins in there.
All right. Okay, you can download us for free on Apple, Google, and Spotify. We appreciate you checking us out. John, appreciate the knowledge as always, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, sounds good.